Discover the incredible hidden fortune of the quiet cowboy who surprised everyone after 10 years. On the windswept plains of Texas, where the sunset splashes orange and purple across the sky, Jack Thompson toiled alone under the weight of expectation. For a decade, he had been the quiet guardian of the Thompson family ranch, a legacy that felt more like a shackle than a shelter. The sprawling land whispered its secrets to him, stirring a longing for renewal deep within his soul. But the shadows of doubt loomed larger than any horizon he could envision. His family saw him as a gentle shadow, a mere caretaker, and the thought of sharing the depths of his innovative farming ideas sent a chills down his spine. What if they rejected him, as they had always dismissed his quieter convictions? In the local diner, people whispered around coffee cups, labeling Jack as just another cowboy, too meek to challenge the looming corporate buyout threatening his home. He could feel their icy skepticism, sending a wave of unease rippling through him. He wanted to lift their perception of him, wanted to shout about his plans, yet the words slipped away like tumbleweeds in the wind. As he pulled another bucket of water for the horses, his mind raced, burdened by a nagging sense of resignation and desperation. Time was slipping away, and every passing day felt like nails being driven into the coffin of his dreams. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. One evening, as twilight crept over the horizon, he stumbled upon an unexpected ally, Mr. Henderson, an elderly professor with twinkling eyes and boundless knowledge. Over cups of strong coffee on the porch, the professor laid forth ideas and modern techniques that ignited Jack's mind with colors he never knew existed. Yet every suggestion felt like a double-edged sword, hope mingled with fear. What would his family think of the plans that could transform their future? On one fateful afternoon, as he leafed through his grandfather's journal, an old map slipped out, revealing land rights hidden beneath varnished pages. His heart raced, igniting a fire of determination. This was the key, the potential lifeline to save the ranch. Yet with that revelation came crushing pressure. Would his family embrace this opportunity, or would they cling to their outdated ways? Jack's breath quickened. Ignoring the tightness in his chest felt impossible. He was at a crossroads between trembling respect for his heritage and a bold vision that could propel them forward. As he confronted the fear and anticipation swirling within him, shadows danced in his mind, chaotic and turbulent, dark memories of past failures gnawing at his resolve. Would they see the future he envisioned, or resent him for daring to challenge the status quo? In that moment he felt a crack forming in his spirit. He could envision himself standing in front of them, excitement bubbling within. But what if they only saw him as a failure they were ashamed of? Just then, the door creaked open, and it became clear. The real test was about to begin, and everything that mattered to him hung in the balance as he prepared to step into the storm. The air felt different that day, electric with expectation. Jack stood at the threshold of the family barn, mind racing. He could almost see the images flickering in his mind, an interplay between past disappointments and future possibilities. As the sun peeked over the horizon, illuminating the cherished land of his forefathers, he took a deep breath, unwilling to let fear dictate his next steps. Jack had always been the embodiment of restraint. His ideas about modern practices and financial strategies bubbled within him like water at its boiling point. But the pervasive doubt stifled the eruption. What would his family think if he disrupted their traditions? Each time he envisioned opening his mouth to speak, an overwhelming silence filled his thoughts, paralyzing him in apprehension. Yet now a strange emboldenment coursed through his veins, bolstered by Mr. Henderson's insights. The thought of being just another nameless cowboy was no longer acceptable. As he paced the barn, thoughts of the land rights and map tugged at him. His grandfather had left him more than just ranch land. He had bequeathed a legacy, one that offered a chance to innovate. Holding the map tightly in his hands, he saw it not merely as a piece of paper, but as a ticket to freedom, a key that could unlock doors to possibilities his family had yet to envision. Still, the impending confrontation loomed ahead, like storm clouds threatening to overtake a calm sky. He needed the right words, the right argument to convince his family of the potential that lay before them. The idea of them resisting filled him with panic, but also urged him forward. The very dreams he cherished deserved voice and action. That afternoon he gathered his family in the familiar gathering spot, their modest kitchen filled with the aroma of dinner simmering on the stove. As they sat around the table, the banter initially flowed, a comforting rhythm that lulled him into a momentarily false sense of security. His family wanted to hear a story about the day's cattle drive, not a challenge to their way of life. As Jack's heart thudded loudly against his ribcage, the moment arrived. "I found something in Grandfather's journal," he blurted, his voice trembling slightly. The laughter quieted to a murmur, curiosity igniting their attention. "There's an old map. It shows land rights we lost track of. It could change everything for this ranch. We can innovate. Modern techniques could save our home." The mixture of surprise and skepticism washed over his family's faces, and the weight of anticipation wrapped around him like a vice. "What do you even know about modern farming?" his father challenged, the familiar defensive tone already present. It was a critique he had grown accustomed to, yet this time it struck deeper. But wasn't it just the sort of confrontation he had anticipated? Jack felt the urge to retreat, but in that space, he noticed a flicker of resilience igniting. Rather than falter, he pressed forward, summarizing Mr. Henderson's ideas, weaving facts and studies like a tapestry of possibility. He saw his mother's expression soften slightly as he spoke about new techniques that could renew their soil and yield better crops. Each word lifted some of the weight pressing against him, and for the first time, he sensed the faintest hint of openness. Yet the nagging question persisted. Would this embrace of innovation be enough to spiral him out of the quiet shadows and into the light of acceptance? As he concluded, silence hung thick in the room, every moment stretching out like an indomitable frontier. Would they welcome him as a visionary or reject him as just a dreamer seeking to disturb their peace? The storm was brewing, and Jack braced himself for their verdict, fully aware that this wasn't merely about farming. It was about his identity, his future, and the direction he dared to pursue. The time had come to face whether he would wait for someone else to save the ranch or rise to the challenge himself. The room was dense with tension as Jack awaited a response. Each ticking second felt heavy, each breath a reminder of the stakes at hand. He could see the wheels turning in his family's minds. His father, stoic and furrowed, the embodiment of tradition. Was he really prepared to entertain the radical ideas Jack had put on the table? Silence can often signal hesitation, but in that moment, it felt like a chasm, threatening to unearth fears they never knew they had. Finally, his father broke the quiet. "Son, what you're suggesting goes against everything we've known. This ranch has survived on our methods for generations." The deep lines on his father's face were etched with concern. He loved this land fiercely, just as much as Jack did. Yet Jack could not help but think of it as stifling rather than comforting. He looked around the table, sensing the weight of expectation resting on him. The faces of his mother and siblings, mixed with apprehension and curiosity, urged him to drive deeper into this moment. Did they want him to uphold tradition just to maintain peace? Or did they desire a future they could embrace together? Drawing from the well of courage he had tapped into earlier, Jack decided he would not only confront the resistance, but also invite them into the concepts he had absorbed. "I understand your reservations," he pressed on, "but this isn't just about new practices. It's about survival, our survival. The world is changing. If we refuse to adapt, we risk losing everything." He caught his mother's eyes. They were filled with a flicker of understanding, yet hesitation lingered like a shadow. "How would you propose we implement these changes?" "It sounds like a gamble," his brother chimed in, skepticism dripping from his tone. Not one to back down, Jack planned to show them that this wasn't just a conversation filled with greenhorn optimism. It was a well-calculated strategy he believed could turn alternatives into concrete results. We could start small, test a couple of new techniques on a section of the land. If it fails, we return to what we know. But if it succeeds? He let that question hang, allowing them to imagine the possibilities. The truth is, innovations have helped farms across the country thrive. We have to be open to learning and exploring, he added, leaning into the very heart of their concerns. Change. His father, visibly torn, began to nod slowly, the tension in his furrowed brow softening. Encouraged, Jack took a bold step further. And I'm willing to invest my time to learn. I'll go to workshops, reach out to agronomists. You wouldn't have to bear the burden of this alone. The old familiar tension shifted, creating space for dialogue rather than conflict. Jack felt invigorated, but he still needed their reassurance. His greatest fear was that despite their gradual openness, the roots of their long-held beliefs would ultimately bind them. The silver lining of the conversation began to ripple through the room. I can't promise it will be easy, his father replied finally. But I'll allow you to pursue this if you're serious. A rush of adrenaline surged through Jack. This was his chance. He had taken steps into the unknown and now doors were creaking open. But he knew there was more to be done. Inner battles awaited even if family acceptance became a sturdy foundation. Yet lurking in the recesses of his mind were doubts. Was this the path he truly wanted? And what if he failed to execute these changes as perfectly as he envisioned? Self-doubt gnawed at him, but he quashed it with a resolute question. If not him, then who? As they concluded the tense dinner, Jack's heart soared with a newfound determination mingled with the fear of the unknown. He felt he had passed through a small fire, tempered and ready to dive into the task ahead, but the hard part was just beginning. The horizon loomed with daunting expectations and elusive innovations, as Jack couldn't shake the feeling that the real challenge lay not in his family's acceptance, but in his ability to execute his vision. Would he be able to persist through adversity, or would he fall short of becoming the innovator he dreamed of being? With a breath of resolve, he realized that tomorrow would mark the first step, but also that he was now thrust into a battle, not just for his ranch, but for his own identity. The morning sun broke through the horizon like a herald of change, lighting up the landscape that Jack loved so fiercely. Yet, alongside the beauty of the day, a palpable weight settled on his shoulders. Today was not just any day. It was the first tangible step toward transforming his family's ranch into something that could thrive amid shifting agricultural tides. With every step he took towards the barn, a knot of anxiety twisted in his gut. Would this endeavor lead to success or be another dead-end dream? In the quiet of the barn, the familiar scent of hay and the subtle yet reassuring sound of horses shifted in their stalls brought a sliver of comfort. He paused, drawing in a steadying breath, remembering that amidst the fears of his family was his own fierce desire for growth. He clutched a notepad filled with ideas for sustainable practices he had researched that might enhance yield without compromising soil quality. Each entry a glimmer of hope, contrasted sharply with the weight of tradition he needed to overcome. Today his mission was clear: to lay the groundwork for the first pilot project, testing crop rotation methods on a small plot of land. It was not grand, but it was progress. He opened the barn door, revealing an expanse of earth yearning for a touch of innovation. The task ahead sent butterflies flitting wildly in his stomach, but he had no room for retreat. Failure was simply not an option. His siblings arrived, curiosity etched on their faces. Their presence could either serve as a buoy of support or a reminder of the doubts that might still linger. Ella, his younger sister with a knack for nurturing both animals and ideas, asked, "What are we starting with today?" Her enthusiasm was infectious, planting seeds of inspiration in Jack's heart. "We'll begin with just a couple of rows," he explained, rallying the energy of the moment. "I want us to try rotating corn with soybeans. It improves soil health and can reduce pests naturally." The words felt heavier than expected, packed with the dreams he was trying to manifest. He hadn't just suggested an idea that day at dinner. He was now the catalyst for change. Gabe, his older brother, chimed in hesitantly. "And if it doesn't work, what then?" The question struck with the force of a hailstone. Jack understood the concern, but he channeled it into resolve. How could he expect them to engage in the process if he didn't embrace the potential for failure? Then we learn from it. Every setback is a lesson, right? He replied, feeling the flicker of confidence as it sparked within him. As they dug into the earth, hands gritty and warm, Jack felt a sense of camaraderie start to build. Each shovelful of soil turned was a small victory, a rebellion against stagnation. He felt the transformative power of labor, realizing that this wasn't merely about crops. It was a larger metaphor for his own journey. How could he foster change in the family and make room for new growth while staying tethered to his roots? With their efforts, they could see immediate results and progress, but doubt still stalked him. What would success look like? Would the family find unity and change, or would it further divide them? By sundown, they sat together on the porch, exhaustion mingling with exhilaration. Jack knew this was only the beginning. The challenges ahead felt like a mountain before him, and with every tick of the clock, the thought screeched that he needed to prepare for confrontation, both internal and external. "Jack, if we do this, we have to commit fully. No half measures," Gabe warned, a seriousness in his tone that sent chills down Jack's spine. His heart pounded and an uncertain smile graced his lips. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger, right? But what if it also drove them apart? That question loomed as he stared into the horizon, a cruel reminder of the delicate balance between risk and reward that lay ahead. Each theory he hoped to test represented pieces of himself, yet to be discovered, and the potential for failure now sat squarely in the palms of his hands. As twilight cast the world into shades of purple and orange, Jack realized there were more obstacles he would face, both physical and emotional. This journey demanded growth in every aspect of his life, not just agriculturally, but personally. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting shadows that felt like uncharted territory waiting to be explored. Jack steeled himself for tomorrow's challenges, aware that the real battle against his lingering worries and fears was just beginning. What lay ahead awaited discovery, and he could only hope they wouldn't be the shadows of failure, but rather the stepping stones to success. One thing was certain: tomorrow would require him to confront not just external obstacles, but the unavoidable truths within himself. Could he embrace failure as a part of growth? The question echoed in his mind, intensifying his anticipation for the next day. Would he rise to the occasion or falter under the weight of expectation? The dawn of a new day slipped into existence, casting a soft glow over the ranch as Jack paced along the edge of the field. Yesterday's promise to himself felt fiery in his veins, but the aftertaste of doubt lingered in his mind. Today he had to make decisions that would echo in the lives of his family and the land he cherished. He felt the powerful tug of responsibility grounding him, compelling him to test not just theories, but his capacity for leadership. With a determined stride, Jack marched toward the small plot that was now clear of weeds and debris. The sun peered cautiously, illuminating the lines of freshly turned soil that seemed to beckon him to take bold action. His siblings were already gathered, tools in hand, faces etched with a mix of excitement and anxiety. They were all in this together, inextricably linked by blood and the shared purpose of reclaiming their family legacy. "All right, today we're going to plant those corn and soybean seeds," Jack announced, trying to inject confidence into his voice. But behind his bravado, internal turmoil churned. What if they planted today, only to see it all fail tomorrow? The specter of failure haunted him, gnawing at the edges of his resolve. As they began to plant, Jack leaned closer to Ella. "How do you think they'll respond once they see the difference?" he asked, genuinely curious. It mattered to him how his siblings felt about this journey. He was not merely leading them into an uncertain future. He hoped to inspire belief in the collective vision. "They'll see it. You know the ranch needs change," she chimed, her enthusiasm bubbling over. But what if change wasn't just welcome? What if it resulted in conflict? Jack understood that pushing for progress carried unintended repercussions, especially when challenged by tradition. Meanwhile, Gabe broke the rhythm of planting as he straightened up, visibly concerned. "It would help if we had external support, someone to guide us through this," he suggested, the worry evident in his tone. Jack could feel the weight of expectations pressing down even heavier now. Was he strong enough to hold the reins without guidance? "No, we can do this ourselves," Jack cut in almost too forcefully. He wanted to stand on his own, prove that breaking from the family's norms didn't necessitate surrendering the ranch to others' control. Yet in the depths of his heart, a whisper rattled against his ambitions. What if he was wrong? What if they'd need someone who knew more than he did? As the sun reached its pinnacle, Jack realized that nurturing the land wouldn't simply require skill. It demanded a kind of emotional intelligence he wasn't certain he possessed. It called for him to connect with his family in ways he was still figuring out. Each seed planted symbolized not only crops to come but also seeds of trust, relationships that could either bloom or wilt under the strain of change. They finished for the day, each of them covered in dirt but without the sweat of defeat. Jack felt a momentary swell of pride watching Ella share her thoughts with Gabe on the best approaches to weeding. It rekindled a flickering flame of hope. But behind that warmth, shadows of insecurity still lingered. What if they failed to grow? What if their collective efforts dissolved into disappointment? As night fell, Jack stood on the porch once more, this time without the comfort of surrounding camaraderie. He reflected on their small victories, but the uncertainty of tomorrow loomed larger. Could he face another day like today, where the stakes felt as high as the mountains beyond the fields? There, with the stars twinkling above, Jack confronted a stark reality. He was not ready to go it alone. Maybe seeking guidance would not be a sign of weakness but a strategic move to fortify their chances of success. As he headed inside, Jack resolved that he would confront an ally tomorrow, someone who understood the field better than he did. Could that decision reshape everything? But would revealing his insecurities to an outsider truly inspire confidence in his family? The thought danced ominously at the back of his mind, feeding his anxiety. Tomorrow would be pivotal. It could lead to an opening of new horizons or further isolation. The tension coiling in his stomach echoed the unsettled thoughts. What lay ahead was still shrouded in uncertainty, yet Jack felt increasingly compelled to push through. The moment of truth approached, and with it the question: would he be brave enough to ask for help, or would he stubbornly forge ahead alone into the unknown? As the sun crested the horizon, casting golden rays across the fields, Jack awoke with a renewed determination swirling in his gut. He lay there for a moment, contemplating the gravity of his decision to seek help. The challenge was daunting, but he understood that growth often emerged from discomfort. Today would be different. He would reach out. After breakfast, he took a deep breath, determined to break the cycle of insecurity that had wrapped around him like a suffocating fog. His first thought turned to his distant neighbor, Ray, a seasoned farmer known for his innovative techniques and success running a larger operation. Jack's heart raced with both excitement and trepidation. How would Ray respond? Would he indulge the whims of a fledgling rancher, or would he dismiss him as naive? As he made his way to Ray's farm, Jack grappled with self-doubt, questioning his worthiness of companionship with someone who seemed so competent. But more than that, he feared being judged, seen as a brother destined to fail. Each step echoed his inner conflict, a mix of fear and longing. Upon arrival, Jack took a moment to observe Ray's sprawling fields, meticulously organized and flourishing with life. The stark contrast to his own pride and insecurity was not lost on him. He felt the sharp pangs of inadequacy as he knocked on the door. Ray answered, his face breaking into a warm smile. "Jack, what brings you over?" The older man's easy demeanor eased some of Jack's tension. I actually wanted to ask for your advice," Jack stammered, suddenly indebted to the vulnerability he had consciously chosen to unveil. "We're at a turning point with the ranch, and I thought, maybe you could help us refine our approach to the crops." Ray considered Jack for a moment before giving a nod. "I'm glad you reached out. Change is tough in this line of work, but it's necessary. Come on in." As he stepped inside, Jack felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. The cozy interior seemed to invite him, yet he couldn't shake the worry gnawing at his resolve. Would he be able to absorb everything Ray could offer? Hours slipped by as they discussed techniques, weather patterns, and the economics of crop rotation. Ray's wealth of knowledge was impressive, but it also magnified Jack's awareness of his own ignorance. He took notes, eager to absorb every word, but the nagging sensation of being a novice perched itself on his shoulders like a heavy burden. "Jack, it's clear you care deeply about your family's legacy," Ray said, leaning back in his chair. "But don't hesitate to lean on others when you need it. Even the best farmers don't do it all alone." Those words struck a chord deep within Jack. He had often viewed seeking help as a sign of weakness rather than wisdom. It was a revelation that ignited a flicker of confidence, illuminating the shadows of his insecurities. Maybe asking for help was less about relinquishing control and more about enhancing it. As he drove back home, the landscape began to shift in his mind. Jack wasn't just a lone ranger attempting to forge a path. He was a leader willing to cultivate relationships and resources that would bear fruit in time. Back at the ranch, he found Ella and Gabe tending to some last-minute preparations in the barn. Their enthusiasm was palpable, and for the first time Jack felt the urge to share his new insights, to involve them in the newfound commitment to growth. "I spoke with Ray today and learned a lot, and we might need to collaborate with him more." Their faces lit up, their trust in him renewed, but as they gathered around the table to discuss their next steps, uncertainty washed over Jack once more. What if their willingness to adapt would be met with resistance from others? What if opening up their process to scrutiny exposed them to having their ideas dismissed? The looming fear of outside criticism sent a shiver down his spine as he considered the path ahead, yet he knew he was no longer alone. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. He would have to confront not just doubts from outsiders but his own lingering fears of inadequacy. Could they move forward together, united and strong enough to face potential backlash? Or would the shadows of tradition cast too thick a pall over their vision? The answers lay in actions yet to unfold, waiting in the dawn of a new day. The following morning, Jack awoke with a sense of purpose that transcended mere determination. He felt as though he had crossed a threshold. His interactions with Ray had opened a door that had long remained shut. This was not merely about crops. It was about dismantling the barriers he had placed around himself, and it was a process that would require every ounce of courage he could summon. After a simple breakfast, Jack gathered Ella and Gabe in the barn. He could sense their flickering enthusiasm from the moment he stepped into the space. Yet, as he prepared to share his plans, a question tugged at his thoughts. Were they ready to embrace the challenges ahead? The weight of leadership had settled uncomfortably on his shoulders, and with it came a need for clarity and guidance. "Today," he began, his voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of urgency, "we need to be proactive. I met with Ray yesterday, and he has offered us some valuable advice on our approach to the crops." He could see both excitement and fear reflected in their faces, mirroring the conflict within himself. "What kind of advice?" Gabe asked, leaning forward. Jack hesitated, aware that he was traversing unfamiliar territory. "Ray believes that changing the way we manage our fields could increase our yield, but it means unlearning some of what we've always known." A round of silence followed. Each of them was absorbed in contemplating the ramifications of such a shift. Neither tradition nor innovation came without its price. Ella broke the silence, her brow furrowed. "But what if it doesn't work? We might risk losing everything we've built." Those words hit harder than Jack expected. What if their attempts at progress did lead to failure? It was a familiar fear, swirling through his mind like a dark thundercloud. But lurking underneath that fear was a growing resolve, a rebellion against caution that urged him to push forward. "It might not work," he admitted, "but if we don't try, we'll never know. We owe it to ourselves and this ranch to take risks." His heart raced as he spoke, the pulse of conviction surging through him. "Seeking Ray's help showed me that even the best farmers, those who have succeeded, didn't get there by going it alone. Let's set a meeting with him to discuss how we can apply his techniques and evaluate where we stand right now." Gabe nodded, his body language shifting into a more confident posture. "I'm in. If we want to improve, collaborating is our best chance. But how do we handle pushback once we start implementing these changes?" Jack felt the weight of that question. Caleb's challenges weren't just on the farm level. They lay in the hearts and minds of those who witnessed their journey. Navigating scrutiny was a form of growth in and of itself. Yet Jack found comfort in that shared commitment. We stick to our vision. We focus on results, learning as we push forward. I believe in this team, and we can withstand criticism together. As the day unfolded, their discussions grew more dynamic. Jack began to sketch out ideas for crop rotations and diversifying their methods, while Ella and Gabe brainstormed potential community outreach strategies. It was invigorating, flaring the passions inside them that had long been dormant. Ideas flowed freely, each assertion building a tapestry of opportunities. But late afternoon settled in, and the shadows grew longer, creeping into Jack's thoughts once more. What if their newfound momentum slowed? What if the confidence they built together dissipated under pressure? Fear seeped back in, weaving through his resolve like a vine around a sturdy trunk. That night, as Jack lay awake, the whispers of doubt harped at his mind. Would their aspirations crumble under the weight of resistance? He could envision the merchants and neighbors who might dismiss their efforts. His heart raced at the thought, yet anchored by the determination bloomed in the light of his brainstorming discussions. Determined to stand firm, he remembered Ray's words. Even the best farmers don't do it all alone. In that moment of realization, Jack closed his eyes, picturing the road ahead, filled with uncertainty, but lined with a newfound strength. Tomorrow had to be more than just another day of idle thoughts. They would reach out to Ray, establish plans for the upcoming farming season, and ready themselves for the barriers that would surely arise. But as sleep slipped away, Jack felt the unease gripping tighter. What faults might surface in his leadership, and would he be prepared to handle the inevitable critique from others? The answers awaited him just beyond the horizon, growing closer with every sunrise. The sun peeked over the horizon, bathing the ranch in a golden glow that felt almost symbolic. Jack took a deep breath, invigorating himself with the sense of damp earth and the fresh promise of a new day. Today felt different. He had a plan, and for the first time in a while he could almost picture the linchpin of success, a collaborative vision forged through teamwork and innovation. After a quick breakfast, Jack summoned Ella and Gabe once more, their faces now brimming with nervous energy. The stakes were palpable, and Jack could almost taste the anticipation in the air. Today, we meet with Ray, he said, his voice steady, determined. It's time to put our thoughts into action and align with his insights. The gravity of the moment intensified as they each absorbed the weight of what lay ahead. As they drove the old pickup towards town, Jack wrestled with a growing knot of fear in his stomach. Questions flared like wildflowers. Was he ready to take the lead? Would he convey the trust and hope they needed? They arrived at the cafe where Ray had suggested meeting, and as they stepped inside, Jack felt the walls closing in, the pressure of expectation hanging heavily over him. Ray was already seated, a warm smile breaking across his face as he rose to greet them. Glad you could make it, he said, his voice a rich baritone that filled the space with reassurance. Jack returned the smile, but internally struggled with self-doubt. Was this man truly willing to help them? He took his seat across from Ray, flanked by Ella and Gabe, their eyes cast down, as if entrusting Jack to handle the negotiations. Let's get started, Ray said, glancing at the notebook Jack had brought. I'm excited to hear your ideas. Jack began recounting their plans, a mix of crop rotation and community engagement, and he watched as Ray nodded in approval, the enthusiasm of the seasoned farmer igniting a flicker of confidence within him. Yet there came the inevitable hesitance when Ray asked the question Jack anticipated but feared. How will you handle resistance from neighbors or family? The question pierced Jack's thoughts, pooling his worries into an abyss of doubt. He was not just risking his own reputation, but those of Ella and Gabe too. He stumbled, words hitching in his throat. We believe in our vision. We know this can work. The firm conviction with which he stated it surprised even him. Ray leaned forward, his brow furrowing. Belief is powerful, Jack, but it must be coupled with evidence. You need a plan to show them it's not mere theory. The weight of those words lodged in Jack's mind. Evidence. It set off a deeper questioning. Could they actually prove their success to skeptics? Was their belief strong enough to withstand the storm of criticism? Jack felt a flicker of determination ignite inside him again. Perhaps the answer lay in the very act of proving to themselves what they were capable of. As the meeting unfolded, Ray shared his methods with clarity, instilling a spark of renewed purpose. Jack started to understand the nuances of what would transform their fields. He scribbled notes, feeling the thrill of discovery. This was knowledge that could elevate their farming, but it also begged the question of their ability to adapt. After the meeting wrapped up, Jack's initial excitement began to tangle with the creeping uncertainties regarding his leadership. They headed back to the ranch, the wind whipping through the open window, each gust amplifying his racing thoughts. What if they stumbled at the first hurdle? What if his decisions led them into failure? Jack felt the burden of these choices tighten around him like the reins of a wild horse. Yet there was a resilience brewing beneath that anxiety. And as the sun dipped lower, he could almost see the path stretching out ahead. Demanding, uncertain, but ultimately his to forge. When they reached the ranch, he noticed a figure pacing near the barn. Caleb, his long-standing rival, was waiting, an embodiment of the conflicting forces in Jack's life. This was not merely a man in opposition. He was a reminder of the tightrope Jack was about to walk between tradition and innovation, skepticism and hope. Jack took a deep breath. Today he confronted more than just crops. He faced a pivotal moment in his personal evolution. Would he rise to the occasion or back down? Only the moment would tell. And it was drawing near, thick with tension and challenge. The moment had come to either uphold his vision or wrestle with the specters of doubt encroaching upon him. Caleb stood with his arms crossed, the late afternoon sun outlining his figure in a sharp contrast against the rustic barn. The air crackled with unspoken tension, and Jack felt his heart rate surge. This was not merely an unexpected meeting. It was a confrontation with everything he feared: failure, judgment, and the overwhelming weight of other people's expectations. "Jack," Caleb called, his voice cutting through the air like a knife. "Heard you were working on some grand plans." There was a smirk on his face that hinted at more than just curiosity. It felt like mockery. "Yeah, actually," Jack replied, the irritation bubbling beneath his calm facade. "We're looking to improve the land, make it more sustainable." Caleb stepped closer, his smile fading into a more serious expression. "You really think you can change things around here? You might be stepping into something you can't handle." Jack's chest tightened at the familiar, condescending tone. A part of him wanted to retort, to defend his vision with the conviction it deserved. Maybe that's the problem. Too many people stuck in their old ways. Change is necessary, Caleb. It's how we grow. Is that what you call it? Growth? Caleb's laugh bounced off the barn walls, laced with derision. "I've seen the way you work. Your father would be rolling in his grave if he knew you were out here trying to chase some trendy farming fad." The mention of his father stopped Jack cold. It stirred up a swirl of memories, the lessons he'd learned, the expectations he'd carried, and the doubt that shadowed his every move. Could he really prove his worth? As much as he wanted to deflect Caleb's jabs, they cut deeper than he wanted to admit. "Look," Jack said, forcing the words out, "I'm not trying to abandon our roots. I'm trying to make them sustainable for the future." Caleb shrugged. "And how exactly do you plan on doing that? Do you think Ray will just hand you the award for being the next big innovator? Because trust me, nobody is going to just sit back and watch you succeed. You'll have to work for it, and I'm not sure if you have it in you." The gauntlet was thrown. Jack felt the weight of the challenge ahead pressing upon him. It was more than just farming. It was about affirmation. Could this rivalry become a catalyst for growth instead of a source of defeat? Should he let Caleb's words dictate his worth or use them as the spark to fuel his progress? Jack exhaled slowly, letting the swirling emotions settle into determination. "You know, Caleb, I appreciate your concern," he said deliberately, "but I'm not looking for validation. I'm not going to justify my plans to you or anyone else. I believe in them, and that's enough." Caleb raised an eyebrow, clearly taken aback. For a split moment, Jack could sense a crack in Caleb's confidence, a flicker of uncertainty at the edges of his bravado. But before he could fully embrace that feeling, Caleb regained his composure, the skepticism returning. "Suit yourself. Just don't come whining to me when it all falls apart," he retorted, turning on his heel and walking away, but not without casting one last searching glance over his shoulder. Watching Caleb's retreating form, a mix of relief and anxiety washed over Jack. It had been his first real confrontation about the vision he was building, and while Caleb's doubts still drummed in the back of his mind, a new resolve solidified within him. Perhaps this was the kind of pressure he needed, the kind that would drive him to execute his ideas with greater ferocity. Jack turned towards the barn, visualizing all he needed to accomplish. It was time to translate his ideas into tangible steps, to gather the evidence Ray had emphasized to quell the naysayers. There would be meetings to schedule, resources to gather, and strategies to execute. As dusk began to settle over the ranch, Jack felt a sense of urgency coursing through him. He had a long way to go, and the coincidence of uncertainty awaited him at every mile marker. But instead of fear, he could hear the thrum of possibility. The wind shifted, whispering tales of change and growth, and he knew the next steps were critical. Before the night consumed the sky, Jack grabbed the notebook filled with his notes from Ray, a tangible representation of his vision and his work ahead. He felt an inkling of what lay before him, the prospect of transformation, both for the land and for himself. It was clear now that the journey demanded more than belief. It required unyielding commitment and adaptable strategy. In that radiant twilight, with stakes higher than ever, Jack's awareness sharpened. The upcoming days would be pivotal, but the question loomed large. Could he nurture this seed of challenge that Caleb had unwittingly planted? It was now or never. With renewed resolve, Jack stepped into the barn, determined to cultivate not just crops but his very spirit. The time would come to present his plans to those who might resist, starting with his family, and he had to prepare himself for that inevitable confrontation. What awaited him in the days to come was uncertain, but one thing was clear. It was time to test his resolve against the doubters. Would he conquer the fear of failure, or would he allow it to cripple his potential? The next morning promised more than just sunrise. It hinted at the turning point in Jack's journey. As dawn broke over the Thompson family ranch, Jack stood at the edge of the field, the earth still cool beneath his boots. Today marked a significant step towards a future he'd only dared to hope for, and he could feel the pulse of something extraordinary in the air. Armed with Ray's insights, bolstered by Ella and Gabe's enthusiastic support, Jack had committed to not just dream about innovation, but to manifest it in concrete action. After breakfast, he gathered his siblings under the expansive Texas sky, which seemed more vibrant today. The sun bathed the land in a warm embrace, mirroring the renewed spirit within Jack. "Today, we're launching the pilot project for our sustainable methods," he announced, voice steady and filled with a zeal he hadn't felt before. The weight of family expectations lingered in his chest, but he felt equipped to shoulder it. Jack briefed them on the specifics: crop rotation, integrated pest management, and enhanced soil health techniques that Ray had shared. The table was set for action. Enthusiasm flared in his siblings, reaffirming their commitment to this transformation. They were not just planting crops. They were sowing the seeds of a growth journey that would reshape their identities as both family members and farmers. As they headed to the designated section of land, every stride felt purposeful. Jack marveled at the collective energy flowing from their efforts. The tasks they broke into were collaborative victories. Ella's laughter intermingled with Gabe's strategic enthusiasm as they prepped the soil, and Jack felt a swell of pride watching his family embrace change with resilience. But as they dug into the earth, doubts, the inevitable shadows, whispered at the edges of his mind. What if their efforts were met with failure? What if they lost everything that had been built over generations? Jack recalled Caleb's scornful words. Would they echo in the face of adversity? Yet he quickly shook off those thoughts, channeling the struggles of self-doubt into motivation. With every shovelful, he fortified their actions against skepticism. Hours slipped away in a satisfying rhythm, the sun retreating softer behind the horizon as they planted the last seeds. Jack stood back, legs slightly trembling from exertion, but heart soaring as he viewed their labor. Neat rows of corn and soybeans stretching across the land, a testament to their vision and commitment. They had taken a risk, and it had united them in purpose. For the first time in a long time, Jack felt a lightness in his spirit. He had broken free from the shadows of hesitance. That evening, as twilight draped its cloak over the ranch, the trio gathered on the porch. Their hands were dirty, hearts joyful, and laughter bubbled like a bubbling spring. Jack gazed at Ella and Gabe, their faces lit with satisfaction. It was a moment he wanted to imprint in his memory. This was not merely a job done, it was a commitment made. They had disrupted their cycle of stagnation, stepping into uncharted territory together. "Who would have thought we'd actually take a chance?" Gabe remarked, a relaxed smile blooming across his face. "Maybe we are more capable than we thought." Jack's heart swelled at the acknowledgement. "Yes, and tomorrow we'll schedule the meeting with Ray to discuss our progress. We need his guidance for the next phases," Jack responded, a mixture of eagerness and the residual nervousness flaring within him. They had planted more than seeds today. They had planted a vision of their future. Each seed held the promise of renewal, both for the land and their identities. Before sleep beckoned, Jack felt the whisper of self-doubt fade into the background, replaced by a solid confidence. He was no longer just the quiet cowboy, bound by the weight of familial expectations. He had moved beyond the shadows and claimed his position as an innovator, ready to push through adversity with tactics founded on both heart and knowledge. The next morning would bring more than fresh sunlight. It would usher in a meeting laden with stakes higher than ever, a presentation of their vision to Ray and the community. With every beat of his heart, Jack knew that this confrontation was not solely about the ranch. It was a reflection of his growth, the worthy culmination of every struggle, and the authentic embrace of vulnerability he had learned to welcome. As Jack finally drifted into sleep, he felt a sense of fulfillment that had eluded him for years. He was not just answering the call of tradition, he was forging a legacy born from both roots and wings. The journey toward change and acceptance had only just begun, but for the first time it felt achievable, marked by tangible efforts and unwavering belief. The horizon brimmed with promise. He felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. If you're inspired by Jack's journey of transformation and want to follow more exclusive emotional stories, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to help feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending below. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your engagement fuels these stories, and together, we will continue to celebrate the power of personal overcoming.